T-E-R-E-M, Terem.
Hi folks, Scott from Terem here. Today I want to talk about the 4 key questions that an executive, a team pitching needs to think about when making a decision on a new product or a new venture. When it comes to making a decision on a new product or a new venture, there's often a bit of chaos. It can get a bit messy. Trying to get into a bit of a discipline around how we think about new product, new corporate venture is just a good thing for us. Having been through my fair share of making decisions around products or new ventures, either as one of the executives making the decision or as one of the team members pitching to get funding to take an idea forward, I really think we can do a lot to improve the discipline here. Now, what often happens is when you're giving the pitch or when you're thinking about it, people get sidetracked by minor issues. It's easy to focus on I'm not sure I believe that feature's going to work. I'm not sure they've segmented the market in 100% the right way. And you know what? Probably that's true, but it distracts from the bigger picture that's going on and where we really need to be focused on, because there's always going to be uncertainty early on. There's always going to be things that could be improved, things that could be tweaked. But what we need as organizations and as the teams is a fast decision, a strong decision around where to go, because hey, if we want to go after it, then we can iterate on it and tweak it. But if we don't want to go after it, then let's stop and put the organization's money, time, resources into other things. And for the team pitching, emotionally they can move on and do something else. So the 4 questions that I think about are, from a company building products and venture standpoint, are: number 1, do we want to be in the space? Number 2, is this a good enough idea? Not perfect, a good enough idea in the space. Number 3, what's the single biggest assumption that we're making? Number 4, can we afford to make a bet on validating that assumption right now? Now, what's really important here is that each question and the sequence is key too. You can't do them out of order. You want to walk through them. And using this as a tool, again, as an executive or the team pitching, you can get people to focus on the right way of thinking about what's going on. So let's go through each of the questions in a bit more detail. Number 1, do we want to be in this space? So, do we want to be in the space is often a big question around strategy. If you've got some existing business there, how is this thing going to complement it? Do we see it as a big market in the future? Do we see it as a trend that we want to be involved in? Is it something we feel we need to learn about? Is it something we feel we need to be in from a defensive point of view? These kind of questions, in a lot of ways, maybe would have been addressed before you pursued and researched an idea, but maybe they haven't. So you want to find out, is this a space that we like, that we want to be in? Are the characteristics of it the right thing? Is the market right? So, focus on that question first. If the answer is yes, proceed to the next one. If the answer is no, we just don't like the space or the market or the problem domain, then it doesn't matter what else you go through, it's not going to change things. So number 1, do we like the space? And a good kind of strategic framework to work within can help a lot here as to what a good space looks like. So number 1, do we want to be in the space? Number 2, is this a good enough idea in the space? And good enough is a really important concept here, because often, when there's executives involved and there's stakeholders involved that come from other areas of the business where things are in a much better place, there's a lot more certainty, then it's often harder for them to translate into a good enough idea. There'll be questions like, there's not enough data, there's not enough information from customers, we need to get that information. And that's hard early on, and you really need a decision and you need the backing. So is it a good enough idea, not a perfect idea? And when looking at a good enough idea, the other thing just to be thinking about as a final point is, will this give us a beachhead to expand from? Will it give us a starting point in this market, in this space? Because you know what, it's probably going to change, it's going to evolve. Key question number 3, what's the single biggest assumption that we need to validate right now or next? It could be more than one assumption, but focus on the biggest one. There might be one or two, and really it's kind of like, what is it that we're making? What are the assumptions that we're making in this business or in this space that we need to find out? Because if they're true, we're going to win. And there is an argument to say, hey, let's believe for a moment that this thing might be true. If we believe our assumptions to be true and for this to play out, is this going to be great? And what are those big ones? There might also be assumptions that underlie the business, maybe around costs or go-to-market. You're going to need to test. Figure out where the big levers are and focus on them, because again, there's so much uncertainty at this stage that it's really easy to get caught up in smaller assumptions that honestly aren't going to impact the business. They're not going to impact how it grows. You really want to look for the big assumption, and I'd almost put money on the fact that that big assumption is going to be to do with your customer. It's going to be to do with, will they use the service that you're putting forward? Will they pay for it? Are they going to like the experience that you have in mind? Can you solve that experience problem? Will the business model work out? Because honestly, that's often the hardest thing to figure out, the hardest one to know about, hardest one to have certainty about, and what factors into that is often a bit of the go-to-market as well. It's easy to call someone up and kind of figure out what costs might be. It's easy to kind of figure out, you might be able to optimize them, and you might be making assumptions, but usually that relies on the fact that you've got people paying you on the other side in the right way that matches your business model, whether you're positioned in the right way. So I think, as a general rule, when you're thinking big assumptions, look towards the customer. Bit of an aside, often I'll see, we're not sure if we can build it and make it work. We're not sure the technology is going to play out the right way. Usually, that is a smaller piece of the puzzle, unless in digital especially, unless you're doing something like maybe robotics or on the more advanced side of AI. The technology can be a bigger assumption. But anyway, work out what the biggest assumption is. And then the next question is around, do we want to make a bet on learning more about that assumption? And I'm kind of explicit here with a few words. So, do we want to make a bet? You're making a bet. That's what it is. It's a bet style investment. Some of them are going to work, some of them aren't. Especially with new things, you can only get so much certainty. And the next one is, do we want to make a bet or an investment in learning? And so, especially if it's a space you want to be in, sometimes just starting to participate is where you're going to be learning. There's a great book, Thinking in Bets. They really can help with the thinking around, is this the right bet? Thinking around bets as a concept of making investments when we're talking about new ideas. But there's also some other questions you can ask, which again feed off the previous question, which is, for the big assumption, is this the cheapest way that we can explore and learn about that assumption? Is this the best first step and the cheapest way or the most effective way that we can step into this space? And this is where I say they build, because it's all coming together here. And the view that you kind of got to take is that these things are going to iterate as well. So we might make a bet on this assumption, learn something, make a bet on the next step. You may also want to make multiple bets on different assumptions, but really separate out the assumptions that you're working on. Then you've kind of gone through these 4 key questions. You're going to have a lot of clarity around where to focus, what you're actually making a decision on as a executive team of stakeholders, steering committee. So these 4 kind of questions that I've gone through helps shift the discussion away from the uncertainties that are almost certainly going to be present when you're talking about a new product or a new venture. There's going to be a whole bunch of stuff you can't answer, and you've got to focus everyone on the right pieces. These questions will help you get to that right discussion about the right piece of what you're doing, and also just help you think about the venture itself and the right way to go about the venture. If there's kind of a bit of a struggle around the word bet, then maybe there's a bit of cultural change or shifting of minds that you've got to go about doing to be thinking about a new product or a new venture in the right way, because maybe the mindset's not there to support this ongoing. And just a kind of last thought to add in is that you've also got to consider the portfolio that you're new product or new venture is potentially operating in or competing with for budget. But ideally, if you've answered that we want to be in this space question, then there's kind of already, really, there should be some budget allocated for that space so you can conduct in-market experiments or bets in order to learn, find out about assumptions, work out if the space is going to work out in the way that you think it is for your business. So that's the 4 key questions to ask when pitching or considering a new product or a new venture within a existing business context. Thank you so much for having me today. Hopefully you got something out of this, something you can share with your team. If you loved the video, hit the subscribe button, check out our channel, there's more videos. Really looking forward to connecting with you again soon. Thanks again for having me.